All right. So this is Brian Robertson, manager of supply resource planning. Can everyone see the presentation and hear me fine?
I can.
Okay. Perfect. So what the plan is for today is we're gonna jump in and talk a little bit about some upstream capacity that Intermountain is looking at. We'll show the reasons why we're looking at it. So we wanted to expand on this area before we file the IRP, just so it's clear in the IRP narrative what the company is looking at and the reasons why we're looking at more capacity. But first, we'll jump in and do some introductions. So I'll just go down the list and have people introduce themselves. So Bruce. And maybe people had stepped away since we were in a little bit of a delay. So Bruce, he's a consultant with Cascade Intermountain. Michael Brudico. Okay, he may have stepped away as well. He's with Avista. Kathleen.
Hi there, Kathleen Campbell with Engineering Services.
Thank you. Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny DeBoer. I'm a resource planning economist on Brian's team.
Thanks, Jenny. Ryan.
Hey, I'm Ryan Denton. I'm also a resource planning economist on Brian's team.
Thank you. Kristen. It looks like Kristen may have stepped away. And I think she's with I think she's just with the public. Mike Parvin.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Mike Parvin, Director of Regulatory Affairs for Intermountain.
Thanks, Mike. Chris Robbins.
Good morning, Chris Robbins, Director of Gas Supply and Control.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Brian, this is
Yep.
Bruce. I'm here. I was working on another app and couldn't move over quick enough, but I was listening.
No problem. Sungjay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm engineer in Idaho Public Utility Commission.
Thank you. Zach.
Yep, Zach Sowards, Engineering Services with IGC.
Thanks, Zach. Bailey.
Good morning, I'm Bailey Steves. I'm a resource planning economist with Intermountain.
And Eric.
Yeah, good morning, Eric Wood, manager of gas supply.
Great, thank you. Okay, so yeah, I'll jump in and talk a little bit about the feedback process. So reminder that we have this email address if people want to give us feedback. We are hoping to get feedback immediately. I know we have the IRP draft that we sent out, and we're looking for any feedback. I think the request was by this Friday. And then we plan to file the IRP here in a few weeks. So yeah, I did welcome and introductions. I'll do a quick safety moment, and then it'll be a very quick meeting. We have it scheduled till 9 o'clock. We can go longer than that if needed, since we started a little bit later. But feel free to interrupt and ask questions at any point. And then we'll talk upstream capacity needs. So quick safety moment, just I know winter's coming up. The weather's kind of turning a little bit. It's going to start snowing, getting really cold. So make sure you weatherproof your home to protect against the cold. Make sure your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors are working and have batteries. If you have a chimney, make sure you get that inspected, and then insulate anywhere where some cold air can get into your house. Never leave lit candles or other flames unattended, and then make sure you bring in your pets, especially when it's super cold. That way they can stay healthy. Prepare yourself, so make sure you dress warmly. Even if you're driving, you'll want to dress warm just in case your car breaks down or you have an accident or something like that. Make sure your car is ready for winter travel, so get a winter emergency kit. Check the antifreeze. Keep a full tank of gas, and then make sure your tires are aren't worn and full of air. And then if power lines are down, make sure you call your local utility and emergency services. If power lines fall on your car, warn people not to touch the car or power lines. Okay, so we'll talk about upstream capacity needs. So these are some slides that we had presented in previous IGRAC meetings. So here's where we're at today. This is a peak event if it were to happen in January of 2026. We anticipate we would be pretty much at our maximum capacity of being able to deliver with our current contracts. So you could see if there's any growth, we're going to be exceeding those numbers, which is what we see at the end of our planning horizon. Here with this next slide, this 2030, you can see that we have about 40,000, 50,000 decatherms of growth on a peak event over the next 5 years. And this exceeds our maximum transport deliverability with the LNG that we currently have on our system. Now, we do believe that we'd be able to meet this capacity with third-party city gate deals. But it's important for us to start preparing for 2030 and beyond, especially with the amount of growth that we're seeing in the state of Idaho. So here's a breakdown of our current capacity. We have about 225,000 coming out of Stanfield. And then there's a map a little bit later on. I can kind of walk through this a little bit more. And then we have 60,000 out of the Rockies area, and then 10,000 from city gate deals, which gives us a total capacity of about 294,000 decatherms. And then when you include storage withdrawals with bundled capacity and storage with TF2 capacity, as well as our satellite LNG, so that's about 155,000, 30,000, 55,000, so a little over 230,000, which gives us that maximum deliverability of 534,905. And we anticipate having that capacity through 2030. So here's a chart that shows the peak day by year under different growth scenarios. So we have a low growth scenario, that's the yellow. Our peak day base, so that's kind of our expected growth scenario, which is the blue, and a peak day high. So if we have higher growth than we anticipate, we could be seeing that green. And by 2031, you can see we'll probably exceed the red line by about 50 to 60,000, 40 to 60,000, if you consider the low. And so what we're wanting to do is look at capacity upgrades on our upstream system to ensure that we can meet peak events in 2030 and beyond. Are there any questions so far? I've kind of breezed through those slides. I figured this would be a pretty quick meeting, but I want to open it up, make sure people are digesting this information and able to ask questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So what are our options? So a couple of things that we ran through. There's obviously just purchasing more supply. Well, the problem with that is you still need the transportation capacity. So obviously supply, while it is plentiful, you need the capacity to move the supply. Similar storage, actually for storage, there's not really very many upstream opportunities for storage. And then again, with storage, you need to have capacity to move that. So again, you can add storage, but you need the transportation to move it. So that third bullet point, transportation, which that one is a viable option, which we'll discuss on the next slide. In terms of downstream options, so there's satellite LNG, which we'll get into a little bit more in 2 slides. There's demand side management that you can consider. So DSM, it could have an impact. It could delay things a little bit. But the amount of growth that Intermountain is seeing in Idaho, the DSM isn't really a viable option to meet all of this load. So that one, while it was considered, it's not really an option that we'll be able to go with. And then there's electrification. So you could also consider electrifying customers, but with the current cost of commodity for gas compared to the cost of electric rates, and then the growth on the electric side with data centers and so on and so forth, we're not exactly sure that would be in the best interest of the customers in a least cost manner. So while we considered it, it's probably not a viable option as well. So the 2 most viable options to consider are transportation and LNG. So right now, and then if there's any that we didn't consider that others think we should consider, please let us know. That's why we have that others question mark. So Northwest Pipeline currently has a Rockies Columbia Connector project. And this is a proposed project. So here it's kind of small, but there's a chart here, and you can see the Opal area. This is where the capacity or the capacity would start, and it would move up into the Pacific Northwest. And there's different paths. One's to Stanfield, one's to Sumas, and then a third one is from Stanfield to Sumas. But the one that Intermountain would be most interested in is the Opal to Stanfield, mainly because Intermountain just serves Idaho. And so there's no need for capacity all the way up to Sumas. And another great opportunity about this project here is, and this is kind of a secondary benefit to Intermountain. If you recall, going back to, and I'll go back to it, this slide here, you can see the amount of capacity that Intermountain currently has from Stanfield to IGC. If there were an issue at ACO or Stanfield and there was difficulty getting the capacity, Intermountain could have some issues being able to serve customers if that were the case because of how much capacity comes out of Stanfield. So adding capacity out of the Rockies will diversify where Intermountain is getting its gas from, and it will reduce the impact if there were cuts from Stanfield where we couldn't get the gas. So there's other project benefits, and the big one is meeting demand. So this is an option that Intermountain was considering. LNG peak shaving facilities. So one of the other considerations is adding more peak day capacity. So what we've done is we went through and we pulled some regional LNG projects that we could find that were recent projects. So what we were looking at was with PSC, the Tacoma LNG, Pacific Northwest LNG with the Leilu Island LNG, which that one was actually canceled. Northwest Natural has a few small ones, and then Fortis BC with the Tilbury LNG. And you could see that the capacity that we're looking at, around 100 million decatherms, it would cost quite a bit to put in an LNG project. Now, the Intermountain still thinks it's a important to do the research and investigate LNG projects on our system and see if there's any cost savings there. With our current LNG, maybe we can do expansion. So those are things that we're going to look at. Here's some footnotes for those LNG projects if anyone is curious and they want to go read more about these LNG projects. But looking at the two different options, Intermountain had to consider which route to take, and what we found best was to move forward with the Rockies Columbia connector. And one reason for that is this project is available right now. It would expand our capacity to serve our customers. If we were to go with an LNG project of 100,000, that would get us, or an LNG project of 60,000, 50,000, 100,000 would be a very large uptake for an LNG project. That would only get us out to about 2030. And then we would need to look at a project again to meet if Idaho kept growing, which there haven't been any signs of it slowing down. So if we were to do an LNG project, we'd likely be looking at having to do another capacity project in 5 years, which there may not be the option to do a pipeline project. So this is a very good opportunity for Intermountain, for Idaho customers to hop in, increase capacity to make sure that there's reliable service under a extremely cold event. So what kind of rate impact are we looking at? So we're looking at 100,000 decatherms of capacity, which now all these numbers here are preliminary, they're estimated. A lot of things can change between now and 2030 when this project takes place. It's looking at about $60 million. And under current customer counts, that would be about a 20% rate increase. It's important to keep in mind by the time we get out to 2030, the impact of the expansion can be less because of customer growth, which would increase the billing determinants, and it would spread out those costs over more customers. So that percentage would probably go down as long as the costs remain the same, and we have increased growth. So that kind of wraps up what we've talked about here. I'm open to taking some questions. I figured this meeting would only take about 20-30 minutes, but I do want to open it up. If there's any questions, anything we should consider. Is there anything from the Intermountain team that you guys want to add? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so. Okay, we will just wrap this up. We thought this meeting was important to hold to make sure all the stakeholders had all the information about the IRP, all the information about the reasoning behind some of the upgrades we're doing. Last IGRAC meeting, we talked about some of the distribution upgrades. This IGRAC meeting, we expanded on the upstream capacity needs. So those are the main projects that Intermountain is looking at for the IRP perspective. So if there is feedback, please let us know by as soon as possible. Like I mentioned, we plan on wrapping up this IRP and hopefully having it done the week of the 15th to be ready to file. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands, no questions, so I'll give everybody back 25 minutes of their day.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Thank you.